The knock came at 6:14 in the morning, 3 hard raps that rattled the glass in my front door. I remember gripping the door frame so hard my knuckles went white, because I already knew, before I saw the uniform, before I saw the folder in his hand, that something had been taken from me while I slept. "Ma'am, I need you to step outside. This property's been reassigned." Behind him, in the passenger seat of a car parked crooked on my lawn, my sister-in-law was laughing. Not smiling. Laughing, with her head tipped back and her sunglasses pushed up into her hair, like she was watching a movie she already knew the ending to. "Good morning, Diane," she called out the window. "You should have read the fine print." I hadn't signed anything. Not that I remembered. "My name is Diane Calloway. I'm 58 years old, and 24 years ago I took $11,000 of my own savings and a used convection oven and turned a leaky storefront on Route 9 into Calloway's Table, a bakery and event hall that, by the time this story starts, was appraised at $1,600,000. I built it the slow way. 16-hour days for the first 6 years. No vacations until my youngest finished college. I signed every lease myself, hired every baker myself, and when my husband Robert's kidneys failed in 2019 and he needed a transplant, I mortgaged the building to cover what insurance wouldn't touch, $190,000, and paid it back in 4 years flat because I refused to lose what I'd built. Robert's sister is Marcy. Her husband is Todd. For 11 years, I'd loaned them money when Todd's contracting business went under, $62,000. All told, never once repaid, and I never mentioned it at Thanksgiving, because family doesn't keep score. That was my mistake. Marcy kept score for both of us. 2 months before that deputy knocked on my door, I had a total knee replacement. I was on prescription oxycodone for 11 days, foggy, sleeping 16 hours at a stretch. Marcy volunteered to help manage things while I recovered. I should have known that when Marcy volunteers to help, she is never talking about me. The betrayal didn't announce itself. It walked in wearing a cashmere cardigan and carrying a bottle of Sancerre. It was 9 days after my surgery. I was propped up on the couch with my leg in a brace, still swimming through the last of the painkiller fog, when Marcy let herself in with the spare key I'd given her for emergencies. She didn't know I was awake. She thought I was asleep in the bedroom. I heard her heels on my kitchen tile. I heard the refrigerator open. And then I heard her voice, low and pleased, on a phone call. "No, she's completely out of it. Todd, I'm telling you." She signed it without even reading it. I had her initial 3 places. She thinks it's a home health authorization. A pause. A laugh, sharp as a knife tapping a glass. By the time she figures out what a quitclaim deed even is, the paperwork will already be at the county. I lay very still on that couch. The brace on my leg felt like a lie itself, like the only honest thing left in the house. I didn't call out. I didn't confront her. I closed my eyes and listened to her pour herself a glass of my wine in my kitchen, and I understood, with a clarity the oxycodone hadn't touched, that my sister-in-law had just told me exactly what she'd done and exactly how she planned to get away with it. 3 days later, once the fog had cleared enough to trust my own eyes, I drove myself, against doctor's orders, brace and all, to the county recorder's office. I asked for any documents filed under my name in the last 2 weeks. There it was. A quitclaim deed, filed 9 days after my surgery, transferring Calloway's Table from Diane R. Calloway to Todd A. Reyes for $1 and other valuable consideration. My signature was on it. It looked almost like mine, the loops a little too round, the pressure a little too even, the kind of signature you get when someone traces a real one slowly instead of writing it fast, the way I actually do. I photographed every page with my phone. I said nothing to anyone. I called Marcy and asked her to come by for coffee, told her my knee was feeling better and I wanted to thank her for her help. She arrived in a blazer I didn't recognize, $600, I found out later, bought 2 days after the deed was filed. I set my phone on the counter, screen down, recording. "Marcy, I found a deed at the county office. My name's on it. Todd's name is on it. I don't remember signing anything like that." She didn't even blink. "Oh, that, Diane, that's just paperwork the elder care attorney recommended for asset protection during your recovery. It's called a revocable transfer on death safeguard, totally standard, protects the building from probate exposure if anything happened to you on the table. Todd's just holding it in trust. Nothing's changed. You're still you. It was a wall of jargon built to sound like competence. Transfer on death safeguards are real. Quitclaim deeds are not that. I know, because I've signed both kinds of documents in 24 years of running a business. But I smiled, and I thanked her, and I said that made sense, and I told her I felt so lucky to have family looking out for me. I pretended to believe her for 6 days. In those 6 days, I hired an attorney of my own, quietly, using a friend's office address for correspondence so nothing would arrive at my house. And I pulled every record Todd's name touched. A business license filed for Reyes Property Holdings LLC, incorporated 11 days after my surgery. A commercial loan application submitted to a regional bank, using Callaway's table as collateral, requesting $480,000, a loan Todd could never have qualified for on his own name and credit alone. He wasn't holding my building in trust. He was using it as security to fund a construction business that had already failed once and cost me $62,000 the last time. The worst part came by accident. I'd stopped by the building on a Sunday to check on a walk-in cooler, and I heard voices in the back office, Marcy and Todd, thinking the place was empty. She's 58, not senile, Todd was saying, half laughing. What if she fights it? She won't, Marcy said. You know Diane. She'll cry a little, she'll call Robert, and then she'll accept it, because that's what she does. She keeps the peace. She's kept the peace for 11 years while we ate her money. She'll keep it now. I stood in that hallway with my hand on the cold metal doorframe of my own building and let that sentence land. She'll keep the peace. Marcy wasn't wrong about who I'd been. She was about to find out who I'd become. What I hadn't accounted for was speed. Marcy and Todd, sensing my 6 days of quiet compliance meant they'd won, filed for an expedited eviction, claiming I was a holdover tenant illegally occupying their commercial property, and requesting a welfare check based on a fabricated claim that I was cognitively compromised and a danger to myself post-surgery. That's what brought the deputy to my door at 6:14 that morning. Not just a stolen deed. A plan to have me declared unfit, on top of it, in case I made noise. Standing on my porch in my robe, facing a deputy sheriff holding an eviction order built on a forged signature, I made a decision in about 4 seconds that shaped everything that came after. I did not produce my phone full of photographed deeds and recorded confessions. I did not raise my voice. I let my shoulders round. I let my hand tremble slightly on the doorframe. Not much, just enough. I asked the deputy, in a voice pitched thinner and older than my own, to please repeat himself, because I didn't understand all this legal talk. I'm sorry, officer. I've been so foggy since my surgery, I don't. Is my sister-in-law handling this? She usually handles the business things for me now. Marcy, still in the car, beamed like I'd handed her a trophy. Inside, I was doing math. If Marcy believed I was confused and compliant, she would stop being careful. Careless people talk. Careless people leave paper trails. Careless people say things in front of family they'd never say in front of a judge. I needed her arrogant, not cornered, because a cornered predator lies quietly, and an arrogant one brags. So I played weak. I asked Todd, when he came by to help me pack a few things, if he could carry the heavy boxes because my knee just wasn't what it used to be. I let Marcy sit at my kitchen table, the same table where she'd once poured herself a glass of my wine, and explain, slowly and patiently, like I was a child, how the transfer worked. I nodded. I said, I trust you both. I even let a little water gather in my eyes, because I know exactly what performance looks like to someone who's never had to give one. Inside my robe pocket, my phone was recording every word. I set the bait carefully. I told Marcy, in what I made sure sounded like a moment of genuine confusion, that I still had the original folder from my knee surgery paperwork at the building, insurance documents, my healthcare proxy, some notarized forms, and that I was worried they'd gotten mixed up with business papers in my office desk. It was true. That folder existed. And inside it, I had slipped a single blank page, notarized, dated, and signed, appearing, to anyone flipping through quickly, exactly like an unfinished power of attorney form ready for a second signature. Bait, and nothing more. Then I called my attorney and asked her to file, quietly, an emergency motion to freeze the deed pending a forgery investigation, along with a request for the bank to flag Todd's loan application. I asked a private investigator, a referral from my attorney, $2,200 for the week, to install a small camera in the office ceiling vent, angled at the desk. Legal one-party consent, my building, my desk. Then I waited. 3 days later, my phone buzzed against my hip while I stood in the walk-in cooler pretending to inventory butter. I watched the feed on a second phone tucked behind a box of flour. Marcy and Todd were in the office, alone, going through that folder. Is this it? Is this the POA? Todd's voice, tinny through the speaker. It has to be. Look, it's already notarized. Diane doesn't even know what she signs anymore. Marcy's laugh again, that same sharp sound. God, this was easier than I thought. Get the loan officer on the phone. Tell him we've got full authority now. Tell him we can close by Friday. I sat on an overturned bucket in that cooler, cold seeping through my apron, and felt something settle in my chest that wasn't rage. It was patience, finally paid off. Marcy scheduled a family dinner for that Friday. A celebration, she called it, at Calloway's table itself, ironically enough, to mark what she thought was the smooth transition of the family business into Todd's hands. She invited Robert. She invited my daughter. She invited, unwisely, the loan officer from the bank, whom she introduced around the table like a prize. I wore my chef's apron, the same one, patched at the pocket, that I'd worn the day I opened this building 24 years ago. Marcy noticed. Still wearing that old thing? She said, loud enough for the table. You'd think after everything, you'd let it go. I like to keep it close, I said. Reminds me what I built, and who helped, and who didn't. Todd stood to make a toast. To new ownership, he said, raising his glass. And to Diane finally getting the rest she deserves. Marcy laughed and added, some people just aren't built to run something this big forever. It's okay to admit that, Diane. I set my glass down without drinking. I agree completely, I said, quiet even. Some people aren't built to run something this big. That's why I want everyone at this table to hear exactly how this business almost ended up in the hands of someone who forged my signature on a deed 9 days after I woke up from surgery. The table went silent the way a held breath goes silent. I laid it out in order, calm the whole way through, because I have never once needed volume to be believed. The forged quitclaim deed, filed while I was recovering. The recorded phone call where Marcy admitted, word for word, that I'd signed, without even reading it. The $480,000 loan application built on stolen collateral. The bait folder, and the camera in the ceiling vent, and Marcy's own voice saying Diane doesn't even know what she signs anymore not 4 days ago in that very office. The loan officer, to his credit, went pale and quietly excused himself to make a phone call. 2 sheriff's deputies, the ones my attorney had arranged, on standby in the parking lot pending confirmation of the forgery report the county had already begun processing, walked in exactly as I finished the last sentence. Real deputies this time, with a real warrant for the real crime. I picked up my old chipped teapot from the sideboard, the one I'd used every morning in this building for 24 years, the one Marcy always said looked too shabby for a place like this, and I didn't smash it. I set it down, gently, deliberately, in front of Marcy's untouched wine glass. You said I should have read the fine print, I said. I did. Eventually. Then I tore the fraudulent deed. My attorney had made sure I had a printed copy in hand for exactly this moment. Clean down the middle, and let both halves fall onto the white tablecloth. What followed moved fast, once the county got involved. Todd was charged with conspiracy to commit forgery and bank fraud, tied to the $480,000 loan application built on falsified collateral documents. He pled to a lesser charge 8 months later, 18 months probation, restitution, and a 5-year ban from serving as an officer of any registered business entity in the state. Marcy was charged separately for forgery of a legal instrument and elder fraud-adjacent statutes, given my age and post-surgical status at the time of the signing. She avoided jail through a plea deal, but she lost her real estate license, the one she'd used to help draft the revocable transfer-on-death safeguard language, which turned out to be nothing she'd ever gotten right, because she'd never actually passed the continuing education course she claimed she had. Robert, my husband, didn't speak to his sister for 4 months. When he finally did, it was to tell her she wasn't welcome at our table, the literal one and the metaphorical one, until she'd made full restitution, which she has, slowly, in monthly payments the court now oversees. My daughter, who'd sat frozen through that dinner, later told me she'd never been prouder of anyone in her life. And the bank loan officer, the one who'd gone pale and stepped out to make a call, turned out to be innocent of anything but bad judgment. He'd trusted paperwork that looked legitimate. When his employer moved to terminate him over the incident, I wrote a letter on his behalf, explaining that he'd flagged the fraud the moment he suspected it and had cooperated fully with investigators. He kept his job. I didn't need to destroy every person the fire touched, just the ones who'd lit the match. 11 weeks later, on a night when the rain was coming down sideways and the temperature had dropped hard enough to fog my kitchen window, someone knocked on my door. It was Marcy. No umbrella, no blazer this time, just a thin jacket soaked through, her hair plastered flat, mascara run down in 2 gray lines. Todd, she told me, had left the state after his probation started and taken most of what they had left with him. She'd lost the house. She needed, she said, somewhere to stay, just for a few nights. Family. I stood in my doorway the way I had 11 weeks earlier, except this time nothing trembled. You once told me I should have read the fine print, I said. I did. And the fine print of being my family was that you were supposed to be honest with me. You weren't. That clause doesn't renew. I closed the door. Gently. Not a slam. I didn't need one. Robert was behind me in the hallway, and he put his hand on my shoulder without saying anything at all, because there was nothing left that needed saying between us. We stood there a moment, listening to the rain, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Quiet. Tea, he asked. Tea, I said, and reached for the chipped blue pot. Here's what I learned, the hard way, at 58 years old. Keeping the peace with someone who's already decided to take from you isn't kindness. It's just a slower kind of loss. Real family doesn't need you weak to feel comfortable around you. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is let someone believe you're confused, right up until the moment you prove you never were. If someone in your life has ever mistaken your patience for permission, tell me about it in the comments. I want to hear it. And if this story hit home, hit like, subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.